Oh, hey Wizard, welcome back. Come on, let's go do some night vision stuff. Today we'll be taking a look at the US Night Vision Designate IR-V Illuminator. And this is the upgraded Arisaka version that you guys have all been begging me to show it to you. So let's get into it and see what it's all about. So today we're going to get into some really cool stuff in the whole night vision world. But tell you what, let's kind of do a primer for the new folks as to what the heck an IR Illuminator even is. The IR device, like the Designate IR-V and D-Ball D2, provide mostly the same basic features. These models include a visible laser that is co-aligned with the IR laser. The IR is not visible to the naked eye, but can be seen under night vision. And I say should be co-aligned. You definitely want to kind of check that with your headset and everything else so you're not just like wildly off when you go to actually zero everything. It happens. Some of them just aren't co-aligned at all. Also included with these night vision devices is the IR Illuminator portion. This projects an IR light similar to a flashlight that can only be seen with devices that can see in the infrared spectrum. The beam can be extremely focused and often uses diffusers, such as these great options from Villain Weapon Systems that I use on my D-Ball D2. Just do your research and pay close attention to what illuminator technology the illuminator you want to purchase actually uses. Now though, I do want to say that I've experienced that too much illumination is actually a thing. The D-Ball D2, for example, has a monster illuminator. It can throw out a beam and illuminate an entire field at 500 yards. But even with our insane EOTech Clip NVLR, the $11,000 long-range version, mind you, could barely make out shapes at 300 yards, making the illumination at 500 yards a weird thing to need. And when used up close, the illuminator is so insanely bright that my night vision is constantly auto-gated, making it hard to even see what I'm trying to look at. I'm just saying that the D-Ball D2 has a home. I just don't think it's on like a shorty pvs14 build. Plus, the D-Ball D2 is heavy and bulky. With the long-range clip-on and diving board mount, it makes for a great night vision setup to really reach out to those 300-yard distances. And what I found really interesting is that the Designate IR-V, like the more I was using it and actually testing everything out, I really feel like it's a top tier pick if you're just working inside of that pvs14 or pvs31 operational range. And interestingly, the Designate IR-V still has that ability to lift the diffuser and highlight at some amazing distances. But tell you what, I'll show you and explain it all as we go. For now, let's do an up-close look at the Designate IR-V and go over all the features of it. Now here is the upgraded Arisaka Designate IR-V. From a comparison standpoint, the DIR-V is tiny compared to the D-Ball D2. The Designate IR-V has an extremely thin profile and removes a lot of the bulk we see in other illuminator designs. The DIR-V housing is also 3D printed and helps in removing a large chunk of the weight. Here we can see a ton of those weight savings with the DIR-V at about 5 ounces and the chonky boy D-Ball D2 at about 12 or 13 ounces. And listen, I'm not a small guy, but having that 1 pound D-Ball D2 out on the end of the rifle all night, I tell you what, I highly recommend you hitting the gym first. At the front of the Designate IR-V, we can see where we have our visible and IR lasers we mentioned during the primer. Testing of these showed the two lasers were co-aligned and had no divergent issues. Meaning it's pretty easy to align your IR laser with the actual Vis laser, but if I'm being honest, that's kind of its own video, like how you want to have the laser to be parallel, so then the actual laser doesn't move on like 2 different axes whenever the distance changes. Yeah, no, that's definitely for later. All right, back to the close-up. Oh, for the zeroing also, there is also an elevation adjustment on the top and a windage on the side to get your zero all set. Moving to the illuminator, we see the upgraded Arisaka Designate IR-V uses a flip-up diffuser. We'll look at this more when we go to test everything, but it allows the user to have a wide, closer range illumination with the diffuser on, or you can flip it up and have a long-range, tight cone of light. You just want to see it, don't you? Well, I'll tell you what, here's a demo of the difference in the two when flipping the diffuser up and down if you want to see that. And the original Designate IR-V had this weird like cap design that you like pulled off and put back on. It just didn't work very well. Moving to the rear of the device, we see the battery compartment that uses a standard CR123 battery. There is also a remote jack if you want to connect in a crane style plug and connect in with like a switch or button system. Now I will say that like the low profile and like the easy to access button made any sort of switching system kind of unnecessary. Next, we have that new Arisaka button. This is a change from the original version and offers a more raised and tactile button along with some cool Arisaka styling. Now, at first, I thought improving the button was just like a weird kind of odd thing to upgrade. I thought the original button was just fine, but as I used it and tested it more, I really learned to like this thing. And I found it to be particularly useful to like find the button when it's like pitch black outside and you have night vision on and you just can't see anything near your face. Just know it may be weird, but new button, very nice. Next, we'll move rearward to the actual control knob. Here you have the option for the visible laser, off, IR laser, illuminator only, and the IR laser and illumination combo. Now, I saw some reviews on the original Designate IR-V, and some of them really liked the actual control knob, but from the original version to the new upgraded Arisaka version, I'm just not the biggest fan. And maybe it's because I'm a lefty, but the knob is just like super tiny and it's just not incredibly intuitive to use. And I don't know, maybe I gotta spend some more time with it, but I'd like turn it on and go to use it and I'd be like, no, is this vis? No, this is the vis. No, I think I turned it off. I don't know, the control knob and me just never seem to really get along, and it really kind of seems a bit out of place with some of the other high-end bits that are on this illuminator. One upgrade I do like seeing on the Arisaka model is the addition of the metal Picatinny mount. Oh, it even has a cool little Arisaka logo on it. This means the illuminator will have a much easier time maintaining zero when mounted on the rail. And I remember it being a chief complaint of a lot of people who purchased the original Designate IR-V that the actual mount system itself was just 3D printed. And if I remember correctly, there were some guys who were able to absolutely mangle that mount when it was 3D printed. So it's definitely nice to see that they upgraded the mount so it's a lot easier to keep your zero. I just hope they decide to upgrade the control knob next. But tell you what, let's go out and actually test this thing out. Starting with the visible laser, this uses a 5 milliwatt class 3 laser that gives a nice clean beam that you can easily see and makes for simple zeroing. Comparing it against the D-Ball D2, they seem identical, which makes sense because they both have identical power levels. And it's a good setting. It's definitely visible at night though. I don't think you want it to be super annoyingly visible like on the Somo Gear one though. That thing is nuts. I do want to share that like during the daylight, I could probably get about 50 yards, like that's about as far as I could actually see the visible laser. So I highly recommend you wait until like dawn or dusk when you can see a lot more of that laser and you can get a better zero when trying to get it all lined up. Flipping the control over, we now see our IR laser. Now this is not visible to the naked eye, and this provides a 0.7 milliwatt laser in that same class 3R. The IR laser is crisp and bright and allows the user to see well out past 800 yards. Looking side by side with the D-Ball D2, we see the D-Ball has a very similar IR laser in terms of raw power. I felt like the Designate IR-V was slightly more powerful, but maybe it was my eyes playing tricks on me because they have the exact same stats on paper. Flipping the controls over to the illuminator, we now see the VCSEL illuminator in action. First, we start with the diffuse setting, and this gives a pretty wide illumination pattern that is perfect for inside of that 50 to 75 yards. Now, it seems like my Brown Bear, like IR device, recording device, is really cranking up the contrast. It's not that bright when you're actually looking through it, so if the images looks fixed, that means I was able to fix it in post. Anyway, the illumination pattern is great for 50 to 75 yards, giving you just enough to light an area without blowing out your night vision. Flipping the diffuser up, we get a much tighter beam that allows the user to highlight and focus on further distances. Here you can see us looking out at the field at 400 yards out and lighting up that entire area. Then we transitioned over and highlighted my neighbor's deck and his grill at about 150 yards. And the biggest thing I'm finding that I like, as I mentioned earlier about the Designate IR-V, is that I feel like I have the correct amount of illumination to use with my pvs14s. It's not like I need to highlight something at 400 yards out when all I see them as is like little white blobs. And let me show you an example. Here, I'll use the D-Ball D2 with the Villain Weapon Systems Narrow Diffuser. Here you can see just how much the D-Ball D2 throws that light around. Now, I love this setup for a longer range configuration, but for a pvs14 setup, this can just get to be too much light and far too much weight. Flipping the diffuser off, you can see just how insanely bright the D-Ball D2 cone gets. But that comes at a cost, as looking at anything up close just becomes completely washed out and you can't see anything at all. And I know you're just gonna tell me to like go on the front of the D-Ball D2 and adjust the little beam that way. But moving this stupid thing is horrible. The Villain Weapon System diffusers are a must-have upgrade for a D-Ball D2. Anyway, we got one more setting on the Designate IR-V, and I think it's probably the coolest one. That final setting is the IR Illuminator and IR laser combined. I love this setting as I felt it provided the perfect amount of illumination to pair with the IR laser, making it incredibly easy to look around in closer distances with the diffuser on, or even flip up the diffuser to see out to those further distances and still have the added illumination along with the IR laser to identify target impact. And the more I used and tested the Designate IR-V with my pvs14 setup, the more I really enjoyed it. So tell you what, let's do some pros and cons, and the first pro kind of surprised me. I know I mentioned earlier though, that upgraded button. The raised button really made it a ton easier to activate the device when it's dark and I have my night vision on. It was very unexpected as it's just a button upgrade, but it made for an obvious and great tactile difference between my visible and IR systems. And it's just a really small one, but it's like, oh yeah, that is pretty nice. And my next big pro is that flip-up diffuser that makes it just absolutely perfect for those pvs14 engagement distances. The Designate IR-V doesn't just plow as much illumination as possible, but instead gives you exactly what you need in the operational distances of head-mounted night vision, making quick and easy work of close-range illumination while allowing for fast adjustment to focus on objects at range. And it really pairs well with the last pro I want to mention, the weight and the overall ergonomics. The small and lightweight design means you can easily toss it on your lightweight setups without having to put in extra reps at the gym. The ergonomic design also allows you to easily access the laser from left or right-hand sides and allows me to keep a nice C-clamp grip on the entire system. And being able to swap shoulders and still having the same basic controls without having to spend like $100 on a bunch of switches and stuff is just absolutely huge. All right, though, much like using a gun right-handed, everything has a con, and there are a few I do want to mention. And the first one is something I mentioned earlier that I just didn't love. Yeah, and I'll bring it up again, that control knob. This control and me just didn't talk the same language. I never understood where it was in terms of settings, and I was constantly fumbling through the various positions when I had my night vision setup on. And overall, I just had some struggles with it, particularly when I had my night vision on, like seeing or feeling what position the actual control knob was in. And it just really felt just so out of place with so many of the other nice controls and features of this device. All right, so there is one more huge con. And it's kind of the elephant in the room here, the cost. At a staggering $2,000, this IR Illuminator is extremely expensive. It's less of a pill to swallow with the metal pick mount and upgraded items like the flip-up diffuser, but it's still a bit staggering to consider this device is 4 times the value of like a PlayStation 5. And I think there is some heartburn in the community because this originally was like $1,100 or $1,200, and then it gained a little bit of popularity and just like almost doubled in price. I just struggle understanding how like lasers and LEDs have somehow doubled in price to like the cost of gold. And I know Hop has said it, and I'll repeat it, but the cost of some of these devices with the electronics required, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But these things just keep selling out, so I don't know. Maybe I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. So what's my final verdict? Well, if your wallet can allow it, the Designate IR-V offers you an amazing lightweight illuminator that packs a punch to pair superbly well with helmet-mounted night vision, giving you the ability to illuminate both close and far targets that align with the engagement capabilities of those night vision systems. Now, I do kind of laugh though, because if you want to reach out to further distances, you can actually save a little bit of money and buy the D-Ball D2, and that is confusing. I say we all band together and try out that DIY illuminator that the viewers posted in Discord. For $100, why not? I'm certainly in to try it anyway, but I hope this review of the US Night Vision Designate IR-V was useful in your purchasing decisions. I want to say thanks to all of our Patreon supporters and all of our YouTube members. You're the ones that make it possible that we can see and test all these cool items and play with all this cool night vision stuff, and it's all pretty awesome. And I want to say thanks to everyone that likes, comments, and subscribes. Comment down below what your favorite IR illuminator is. All right, everyone, Walsh out. And maybe if you stick around for November, you'll get to see some really cool night vision classes that we're going to be doing. And I'll be taking this guy out in that one. This is where I have some sort of IR illuminator sandwich joke. I don't have one. I don't have a sandwich joke. Get out of here.